Welcome to Octopus Guard 3.14, a simple guide to using Octopus Guard on top and bottom. Let's get into it. Let's begin by entering Octopus Guard from bottom half guard. So if I want to enter Octopus Guard from half guard, the most difficult part is getting past this crossface. If I could just reach through, that'd be great. But he's going to try to crossface me and I'm going to get trapped. And so instead, I need to pass this crossface arm over my head. The easiest way to do that is with a 2-on-1 on the wrist. I'm going to begin with my frames, keeping my knee shield intact. I'm going to slide down to the wrist and then replace with the other hand. Now I switch my bottom hand grip so that I have a clean 2-on-1 with both hands. Now, I need to reach through underneath this arm. If I let go and try to reach, he's gonna crossface me. And so I wanna make sure that as I reach up, I lead with my elbow, keeping my wrist grip as I do. Now before I'm able to sit up into Octopus Guard, I wanna switch my feet. If I reach up and over with a knee shield, my knee shield is going to fall apart and I'm gonna get collapsed back down. And so instead, once I secure this wrist grip, I'm going to pass my knee shield into a half butterfly guard. Now I'm free to pass this arm over the top, leading with my elbow, reaching up and across his back. Now, if my opponent is playing disciplined with this elbow, I need to get him to extend by using a threat. So I'm going to begin by reaching a scoop grip underneath his leg. Now I expect him to cross face me away to prevent the leg entanglement, so I'm going to self-frame with my top arm and then bring my bottom hand back into position. Now I simply slide down to the wrist, re-grip, and switch. Another easy way for me to get a hold of that wrist is to threaten extracting my bottom knee. If I'm able to extract this bottom knee, I can threaten a closed guard or a triangle. And so as I look to extract that bottom knee, he might post my thigh with his hand. Now I know exactly where his wrist is. I'm going to grab it, re-grip, and switch. Before I reach through, I want to replace my knee shield with a half butterfly guard. We'll get into why in a moment. Now I'm free to reach up and over for my Octopus Guard. I'm going to lead with my top elbow, clearing his wrist over my head as I do. This is gonna prevent the crossface. Now as I look to get up and reach around his back, I don't wanna roll towards him because his weight is gonna make that very difficult. Instead, I'm going to draw my bottom elbow up over my shoulder. This allows me to get up in place without driving against him. Now I reach up and over his back. Now, once I reach up and over his back, I pop up from the elbow to the hand and I secure my Octopus Guard. Now let's talk about the positional mechanics here. My top arm has a very important job of controlling his posture. If this is too low, he can reach around my face and put me back down. So I keep this high up towards his shoulders, controlling his posture and monitoring his cross-face arm. Now my secondary arm is operating as a post. It's very important that I post this far enough back to bear his weight. A common mistake here is to post too close to their hip line, which leaves you unstable and easy to knock over. Now for the jobs of my legs. My primary leg is operating as a butterfly hook, and that's serving to frame his hips away. Without this, it's very easy for him to crash into me and topple me over. My secondary leg is maintaining tension against this butterfly hook. I'm back heeling strong, keeping his leg stuck in the pocket. If I were to release this, he can take his leg out and step over my butterfly hook to mount. So these work together to control that far leg and prevent him from crashing his weight. Now that we're in Octopus Guard, it's time to attack. I'm gonna begin by building height. So I pop from my elbow to my hand, and then I'm gonna look to get up to my knee. So I have my hand planted as a base, I have my butterfly hook planted as well, and I'm hanging as much of my weight on my primary arm as I can. This frees weight from my bottom leg, allowing me to do a technical get up and build to the knee. So if my opponent doesn't react here, I have a nice easy back take. I'm just going to knee cut around the corner, turn to face my opponent, and collect my far side underhook. Now, if I successfully build height and my opponent wants to stop this back take, he might step this near side leg up. By stepping this leg up, he builds an obstacle that I can't get around, but it also leaves him vulnerable to a scoop sweep. So I'm gonna take my base arm and reach underneath his thigh, and then I'm gonna use my overback grip and the scoop grip to lift him over my base leg. Now, it's very important that instead of lifting with my back, I tilt him over it like a fulcrum, making him weightless. Then I lean in to put him down. Now, a super common mistake I see people make is that they try to lift with their arms. The problem is, if your opponent is heavy, this is going to be extremely difficult. Instead, I'm going to use my base leg as a fulcrum so that I can just lean in and tilt him over it. Now, he's weightless, and it's very easy for me to continue to lean forward and put him down. Now, if my opponent decides to step that leg up before I build to my knee, I can easily leg lock them. All I'm going to do is switch my top arm to a grip over the knee. I'm going to grab his foot with the other hand, and I'm going to use these to slide underneath my opponent. As I slide my hips under, I whip my leg up, continue to reap, and I expose an easy outside heel hook. As I initially get up to my elbow, my opponent might begin dropping their hip and collapsing me back down. Instead of conceding position, I can use his momentum to do an overhead sweep. So I'm just going to use my secondary arm to block his knee. This is going to prevent him from posting on this side of his body. Now, as I begin rolling down to my back, I keep my core engaged, pulling my knees towards my chest, and I begin to lift with my butterfly hook. This leads me into a back roll and right on top. Now, if your opponent has seen Octopus Guard before, sometimes right as I reach through, he'll posture up. Now, this is a problem because if he postures up before I reach over his back, I have no means to control his posture. What I can do is ride the momentum up into a hip bump sweep. So as he lifts up and away from this arm, I'm going to follow with my hips, and I'm going to reach my primary arm to trap the shin. So I hug the shin nice and tight, keeping my elbow tight to his body. I lift my hips up and drive directly across this obstacle. Now, the problem I see most people have with this is that as their opponent postures away, they try to hip through without gaining any hip height. They try to muscle through their opponent's base, but they don't have enough leverage to actually knock them over. Instead, it's very important to build hips up and then across. If you want to build better BJJ faster, click the link above for 30 days and 30 ways to train smarter. Now let's enter the Octopus Guard from bottom side control. So I'm going to begin just the same, trying to deal with his cross-face arm so that I can reach underneath. So I slide from my upper body frames down to his wrist, leading with my top elbow. This is going to clear the path for me to pass over my head and through. Here's the major difference from the half guard version and the side control version. If I reach this top arm super deep across his back, I have nothing controlling his hips, and so he'll just run to north-south and flatten me out. And so instead, I need to use my arm to block his hip line. So I post on his thigh and keep weight over that thigh. Now when he goes to run, I can use my hand to stop him. Now it's very important that you keep your top elbow to the outside of their body. If this elbow floats to the inside, it's extremely easy to crush and flatten you out. So I post the thigh, I keep the elbow to the outside, and I'm engaging my lat the whole time. Now on the other side, it's very important that you keep your top leg engaged and high against their back. If this leg drops even for a moment, it's extremely easy to step over and take mount. So I keep my top side leg tight against his back, and I'm able to pinch my elbow and my leg together to keep my opponent stuck in the pocket. Now before we attack, we need to learn how to build height. Now this is a little bit different from half guard in that I can't roll up to my elbow. There's too much weight over my chest, and that's gonna be damaging to my shoulder. Instead, I'm gonna look to build height with my hips first. So right now, my elbow is in front of my hips, and it's going to get in my way as I look to roll up. So what I need to do is drive weight onto my shoulder to free a space to draw my elbow behind my hip line. Now I'm going to look to plant my bottom toes, getting up to the knee, and then up to the elbow. So as I clear this elbow, I pop up to the knee, I step around his back, and I pop up to the hand. Now, as soon as I build up to the elbow, I need to win a posture battle. If I stay here, my posture is broken and it's very easy for him to put his body weight on me. And so what I need to do is pop up to the hand and straighten my back out. This breaks his posture and gives me the advantage. Once we get here, the first thing I'm gonna try is that scoop sweep. So I've bent his spine over my base leg. I'm just going to reach under his leg, tilt him up, and then dump him across. Now, as we get up and we're looking for our scoop sweep, our opponent might sink their base into their hips. This is going to make it really difficult for me to lift him up and dump him over, but it sacrifices his balance on this side. So I'm going to switch my hand from the hip post to a shin grip, covering his leg and preventing him from posting. Now, I'm going to pop up to both feet, running around the corner and dumping him over. Now, if I get up to my elbow, sometimes my opponent will throw in a tight waist. Now, as they throw in that tight waist, it makes it more difficult for me to win this posture battle and start breaking him down. And so instead, I'm gonna go with the momentum and I'm gonna force a fat man roll. So I'm gonna begin by trapping his wrist with my base arm, making sure he can't change his mind. And then I'm gonna look for a shoulder roll. So I tuck my shoulder between our legs and I look for a bridging position. Now I bridge through, forcing a shoulder roll and getting up. Now, a common problem you'll run into is that as you reach through towards this octopus guard, your opponent will drop their hips towards your head. This collapses your upper body frame and makes it really difficult to build height. But as he does this, he sacrifices his base on this near side. And so what I'm gonna look to do is heist my hips up in the air over his body and run to the other side. Now, if instead my opponent switches his hips close to my lower body, my hips have too much weight on them and I'm not going to be able to heist them up. But he's opened up some space that I can use to expose his back. So I'm going to switch to upper body frames against his back, keeping him low on my body. And then I'm going to shrimp out to make some space. With this space, I can slide my bottom knee through the pocket and around his back. Now, typically he's going to begin scrambling away from me. I'm going to take my top hand and grab his lat. And as he scrambles up, I pull myself up with him. Now I can grab an underhook and start to expose the back. A common problem you'll run into is that as you look to build height, your opponent will step over your top side leg. Now this stops my octopus guard, but it gives me access to both of his legs. So I'm going to collect both of his legs, and then I'm gonna look to roll through to saddle. Now in order to roll through to saddle, I need to stack my hips over my own head, and I need to swing with my free leg to gather momentum. So I swing through and put him into saddle. Now that we've covered octopus guard, let's learn how to counter it. So, if my opponent's in half guard and he's looking to set up octopus, the first thing I need to know is how to punish a sloppy entry. So if he looks to reach through without much setup, it's gonna be very easy for me to get a crossface and flatten him out. Now if he's strong, it's gonna be difficult to flatten him out with a simple crossface. I need to exploit mechanics of his face. I'm gonna lay my wrist bone underneath his nose, and not only am I extending forward, I'm also flaring his head outward. Another place I can connect to is just under his jawline. Here, I'm looking to turn his face and then flatten him out. Now, if my opponent does a good job and he hides his face from the crossface, the next thing I'm worried about is him building height with his hips. Now, there's one thing I can do to make it more difficult for him to build height with his hips. I'm going to take my bottom leg, back heel nice and tight, and then turn it outwards. This drops my hip over his, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to extract that bottom leg. Now, if my opponent does successfully base up, I can also look to hip check him and put him back down. So if his base arm is too far away from my hip line, it's going to be easy for me to briefly switch my hips and hit him back down to the mat. So if my opponent makes the mistake of reaching through without building height, it's very easy to take advantage and gain a pass. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to Turk this leg, and then I'm going to switch my hips, wedging my outside leg underneath his. This keeps his hips stuck to the mat. Now I take my top side arm and I post his thigh. This prevents him from following me, and it also helps me extract my top leg. Now I point my top leg towards the ceiling, pull it straight out of the pocket, and then I throw it over to collect mount. Now time for my favorite counter, the octonet. So if my opponent gets into octopus guard from half guard, he does everything right, he's posted, he has his half butterfly in, I'm going to look to exploit this posting arm. So first things first, I need him posting wide. So I'm gonna threaten a hip check to put him down, forcing him to post out wide. As he does that, I'm gonna look to collect my octonet hook. Now, a lot of people struggle with this due to shoulder mobility, so a tip I like to use is to lean away from that arm. I lean towards his hip. This helps to rotate my shoulder and feed that hook. Now I'm gonna look to roll through to the high ground position. So I dive over doing a shoulder roll, and I look to land on his far arm. Now I have both arms trapped, I have my back covering his near arm, and I have my octonet hook hooking his far arm. Now, I wanna get up here. It's going to be very difficult to just turn towards my opponent. So instead, what I'm gonna look to do is walk my legs away, switch my hips, and then build up. Now, as I build up, I reach underneath the head and I collect my hands together. This traps his arm. Now I drive up, pulling his arm underneath his body and totally immobilizing his upper body. There's plenty of options from here. One I really like is to throw this leg over, chair sit, and take the back. Now, as I look for this octonet hook, sometimes I'm worried about him trapping my leg before I roll. So what I like to do is extend my trapped leg out a little bit and then using my opposite leg to throw in a shin pin over his thigh. Now, as I look to roll, I'm able to extract my leg, pinning his thigh and rolling through. Now, as I reach through to hit this octonet roll, sometimes my opponent hangs on tight with his legs. Now, this might be a little bit of a battle, but I have an advantage. Both of his arms are trapped, and I have a free hand to help me fight his legs. So I'm going to post on his near side thigh. I'm going to plant my inside foot and hip out. As I do this, I can press his inside thigh towards the center, trapping it with my opposite leg, and then I'm going to kick him through, pulling his shoulder towards me. Now I'm able to collect a seatbelt, throw my top hook in, and collect the back. Now let's punish Octopus Guard 2.0. So as my opponent looks to post up on my hip, he looks to build height with his hips first. As he builds up with those hips, I'm going to step my near side leg up, trapping his leg across my hip line. Now this does two things. It puts a lot of the weight over his upper body, making it hard to build height, and it also keeps his hips unlevel. I can use this to drive in, toppling his hips over and pinning his low thigh. Now, if my opponent does successfully post up to his elbow or his hand, I'm gonna send the octonet. So I'm using my near side shelf to tilt his hips as I begin to roll. So I reach deep, I lean forward until he tips over, and I roll through. Now in this case, because he was posting my hip instead of reaching over my low back, I may not fully trap this arm. So as soon as we land, I'm assuming he's going to reach this out. I'm gonna reach my far side hand to trap the bicep. Now this is not a very stable grip, so what I'm gonna look to do is bring my outside thigh underneath his tricep, backstopping against my grip, and then I'm gonna reach my arm deep through. Now I trap his elbow with my lat, pulling it back, reaching under the head, switching my legs, and building up to high ground. Thanks for watching. Click here for 30 days and 30 ways to train smarter, and click here for another video YouTube thinks you'll love. See you next week.